T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
Well, my Stros literally just lost the last game of a 3-game set. Did really good. Take the first 2 against the Miami Marlins. So, after getting swept by Boston, really needed that. So today, could have been better, but I'm not bad otherwise. Just looking forward to football. That perfect symmetry when we got baseball, football, and maybe even basketball. Sign me up.
Right, and I got relatives from West Virginia, so I'm excited that they're in West Virginia. Always like that they go there. Country roads take me home to some Texans football this weekend, where I belong, is how I feel about it. But let's launch right into it. This week has been pretty exciting in terms of developments for the Texans. A lot more to talk about. Let's start with Cam Robinson. Goes down injured. Was in Jersey today. Was there for walkthroughs. Didn't participate in drills. It's something that I've been thinking about. I probably should have posted about it when I was thinking about it, because I've been thinking about it for the week prior to it happening.
You saved it for the show, though.
I saved it for the show. In the event of an injury on the tackle side of things, it feels like tackle is the better part of the Texans offensive line. As much as there's some inexperience there, if we're looking for a bright spot, Titus Howard is there as a potential tackle, and then the guys they actually have playing tackle also have shown a lot better than the rest of the offensive line against really good guys like Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter in practice so far with the pads on. So how do you feel about potential offensive line that doesn't feature Cam Robinson, and how do you think the Texans should react to that, and relative to how they actually did?
I think this was the goal of the offseason with respect to the offensive line for the Houston Texans. A lot of people saw some of the moves they made and questioned them. Okay, why are you bringing in this guy? Why are you bringing in that guy? I can't really see the vision. Guys are kind of stepping on toes, things like that. And I really think that this was the idea, is that they were going to have a unit that they weren't going to have to worry about, okay, if somebody goes down, who's the next guy up? We're going to have that guy in-house. We're not going to have to hope it's a practice squad guy. We're not going to have to hope we got to go out on a waiver wire and find somebody who's on the street. So perfect example here, Cam Robinson goes down and they just shuffle the deck a little bit and things keep going like nothing changed. So I love that they have the depth to be able to do that. I think a lot of the guys that they went out and acquired had some versatility, so they could play inside or out, kind of like Titus. And I think like this was the future, the look.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that the offensive line as a whole is being looked down upon in a way that my optimism is up. And I mean, I don't know. I had this discussion with someone the other day, like as fans talking about the team, I think there's always going to be a sense of optimism from us. It's very rare that you or I kind of stray from that. But overall, like, I don't feel as bad about the Texans offensive line as a whole that as some other people seem to, but especially at the tackle side of things, like I think they've done a good job of bolstering up that room, and especially with their main push this offseason and since next year has been for guys that are versatile, guys that can play guard and tackle. So the thing that suffers is when you prioritize those guys, you tend to get poor quality guard play. I mean, you had the Jets playing 4 tackles all across their offensive line at one point last season. I mean, it can be done, but the guard position, in my opinion, is the position that suffers. But you have one of your best tackles playing guard, and he's your best option at tackle in Titus Howard. So I think that suffering the loss of Cam Robinson or just one tackle, to me, doesn't significantly impact the Texans' quality there because they can just bump Titus Howard out. I think that when you look at the guys that are vying for guard spots on the team, Ed Ingram, Juice Scruggs, and the guys that they could look to with Titus Howard out, the drop-off in talent or the movement, it doesn't really move the needle for me one way or another. I think you're kind of just hoping the scheme adjustment gets you quality guard play. That's really what it comes down to. An interesting aspect of this is that Blake Fisher, who drafted second round last year, showed up, started quite a few games, kind of in a situation that I kind of expected Ariante Ursary to step into, where, injuries happened and he was kind of forced in before maybe some thought he was ready. Didn't show poorly, showed okay, and just hasn't taken the steps this offseason. So it's interesting to see. Do you think, I only say this because, Payne and Pendergast have talked about it. I saw Texans Jacobs tweet on it, but would you say there's a universe where maybe the Texans like the guys they have in the room outside of Blake Fisher better, and they maybe try and trade or move on from him? Full disclosure here, I think that a second-year tackle like Blake Fisher is not a guy that you move on from lightly or really at all at this point. But do you think there's a situation where that could come up for this Texans team?
I don't. I can't understand a world where people think that they don't need to have all the bodies. We just saw one of the tackles go down. There's no scenario where I'm going, you know what? Maybe I need to trade one of these guys and we'll just figure it out. Like, I think they want depth and more depth. And if anything, they might go out and get another guy because of what happened with Cam Robinson, as opposed to going, oh, well, we've got the guy, we like Ursary. I think we're set there. We're just gonna, cut bait on Blake Fisher. I think he's gonna be there until he either underperforms or he costs too much. So I can't see them. I can't see them getting off of him and sending him out to another team for anything.
Yeah, and I like Brandon Halom's point. To be fair, like I said, I don't think the Texans should move on from Blake Fisher. It would take a lot. It would have to come out. Like, obviously, his main struggle has been false starts. I think that this Texans coaching staff is taking a strong stance against putting players in that commit those penalties because it was a big problem for the team last season. And so I don't know if it's a skill issue so much as it is just jitters. I don't know. I don't know what usually causes someone to continually false start. I'd have to make a phone
ask Laremy Tunsil.
Laremy Tunsil and see what he has to say about it. But things happen. People have off years, off times. It's a really bad stretch of Blake Fisher's career to do that, considering the opportunity that's in front of him. But I don't think that it takes away from his ability to remain on the roster in a swing tackle capacity or something like that. And I would not feel like, once again, I think a lot of people are really down on the Texans offensive line as a whole, and they're taking out their hatred of the interior offensive line on the outside. But what the Texans have done in the tackle room, I'm not like, it would take a few injuries. This is not like a CJ Stroud situation where if he's down, like, we don't practice screwed, we're just going to practice. And if CJ's injured, we're done. Like, in the offensive line's case, at least at tackle, I feel like they could sustain a couple injuries before I'd be super concerned about what's going on the outside. Now, interior-wise, it's the same thing for different reasons. It's like, if one of the guards that's playing right now goes down, what do they have? Like, what guard do they have outside of Titus Howard? Sure, would be the most significant drop-off you'd see, but outside of that, like, if Laken Tomlinson goes down, is there not a guy who could step up and play left guard comparably based off of what they've added? Like I've been saying all offseason, they've relied on scheme change to improve the quality of the offensive line, and when you do that, you're basically saying, we got a bunch of guys who really want it, and one of them will play, and that guy will do well because the scheme is good, or at least okay. He will block acceptably. And so I'm not offensive line, surprisingly enough, or maybe unsurprising depending on who you ask, is not a position I'm super concerned about injuries at because of the depth that group has. So looking at others, speaking of injuries, we got president of the Damian Pierce fan club here, so it's an appropriate time to to bring up that Dameon Pierce has come back, and you'll like what I have to say. I mean, so for those who don't know, I haven't really posted about it. I need to post about it. Bleacher Report, I work with their creator program, and they've changed their model. So I actually do short videos now for them that I pre-film. And the one I just posted today, it may be up, I think it's up right now, is discussing this very topic. But I think that Nick Chubb is not necessarily guaranteed to be the Texans RB1 if Mixon misses time. And earlier people were like, well, who do you think it is? Pierce? Pierce is on physically unable to perform. It's like, no, Pierce is back now. They just activated him off physically unable to perform. And with the change in scheme, it fits where he's at. It fits his style of running. I think he has a legit chance to take a shot at, earning a contract after the Texans. I think that's it. Or maybe proving that he should be their guy after this season. But what do you think of Pierce returning from physically unable to perform, and how Mixon's situation affects his role shifting from is he going to make the roster to probably there?
I think that all depends on how severe this Mixon injury is and what that timeline looks like. We don't necessarily know. I feel like all of those guys are going to be a committee. I don't see – you got Chubb coming off of a major injury. Woody Marks is a rookie, and then there's Dameon Pierce, who is somewhere in the middle. So I can't imagine any scenario where – unless, one of them has an exceptional training camp and preseason where he just the tape just speaks for itself. Dude runs, crazy all over Carolina or whoever, Minnesota. And then you're going, well, how do you not start him? But all of that doesn't really necessarily matter if Mixon's injury is not as severe as some people feel. The same people that are going, well, Mixon could be out for a long time, were the same people that thought that CJ Stroud had a shoulder injury. So I'm not ready to – Mixon has done this in the past where he didn't play a ton, and then all of a sudden, all right, week one, I'm ready to go, and looks like nothing's wrong. So until I get a firm, from somebody, from Schefter, from somebody out there saying, hey, this is what the timeline looks like, this is what the injury looks like, he's going to be out for a significant amount of time, then I'll cross the bridge as to who becomes the guy. I think they're all going to be fighting for 10 or 5 carries or whatever behind him when the season starts.
Yeah, and I want to address this comment I just put up with, so you don't believe Chubb is Chubb anymore. But first, with the Dameon Pierce situation, with the Joe Mixon situation, the way they're approaching it is very reminiscent of Christian Harris last season, which means that they're talking he could be ready week one. He'll start the season on IR, and they'll say, well, he'll be ready after that. Oh, well, it's been 7 weeks. Why is he not playing? Okay, now it's week 14, and we'll see him. I'm not saying that's how it's going to play out, but it's playing out that way right now, and history does have a tendency to repeat itself. So when I look at that, I hope that he's good. But a season-long thing that the Texans were less than forthcoming with to the public that has now come out because they have to say whether or not he's going to be ready for week one, and they're starting to have their doubts, does not give me a lot of comfort that Mixon will be there. But I do agree that Mixon coming back makes it a moot point, but it does revisit a conversation that we had last week, which I kind of tried to make this point, which is that the feeling with that running back room is that it's Mixon, Chubb, and then Pierce, Woody Marks, Pierce, or Dario Gambawale. And you probably, Gambawale, if you want a utility guy who's really good on defense, who shows some value as a running back, but mostly, when you get that deep on the depth chart, you're looking at what he does outside of running back. But with Mixon already showing signs of bad health, I think you feel better about having Dameon Pierce in that room as a guy who could potentially step up and maybe carry a larger load. He has a history of having done it. He fits your scheme. So I think that, and with the way the Texans have done it, immediately they didn't put Woody Marks in there as running back one. They didn't put Dario Gambawale in there. When Nick Chubb was out for a practice, they put Dameon Pierce the whole offseason. D'Amico Ryans has spoken to how they still have plans for Dameon Pierce. And so this just kind of, to me, a sequence of events that aligns with what the Texans have been saying. Because, to me, especially starting this offseason, D'Amico previously would speak really highly or say stuff, and then the Texans would make moves sometimes that maybe didn't align with that. You're like, okay, well, D'Amico's just being a nice guy. He's the head coach. You're not going to see him, cut his player down in front of everyone. But now we've seen more of an alignment with, what D'Amico says and what the organization does. So I think this is one instance where sticking with Dameon Pierce moving forward, showing that he is RB1 if Mixon's out, and Chubb kind of puts him as RB3 on the depth chart, which means that Woody Marks to me is RB4, which then means that there's not really a place for anyone past that. There's talk of Jawar Jordan. There's talk of J.J. Taylor and other guys that could fight for a spot. But I mean, and if the Texans carry 5, a name that hadn't been talked about is British Brooks, but British Brooks would have to fight for a fullback spot like he did last season, and they've got Jacob Johnson, who has shown really well as fullback. So then you factor him into the room. Those are your 5 guys. So it is interesting to see how that shapes up. But to speak to Chubb, I hope Chubb is the guy that people thought he was before he got injured. I don't want to assume that he's going to come back and be that guy. And I said as much, like I said in the Bleacher Report video, I think, and I've said it before here, I think that Nick Chubb chose to come to Houston because in Houston he doesn't have to be that guy. He can step in, he can work his way back. If Nick Chubb steps in and carries the rock 5 times and picks up like 30, 40 yards, that's fine. Even as long
that's better than fine. What are you talking about?
If he carries the ball, okay, that's probably not. I'm trying to think like 3 to 5 yards.
Like 8 yards a carry. You kidding me?
I'm thinking like if he gets 3 to 5 yards a carry, if he can come in on 3rd down and block in a pass blocking situation, if he can come in on a 3rd and short and just bulldoze his way through and get a first down and be that 3rd down back the Texans need, that'd be great. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I expect Nick Chubb to suddenly be RB1 if Mixon is out and just run for 130 yards and just carry this Texans run game. So do I believe Chubb is Chubb anymore? I need to see it. And that's how I feel about it.
I've seen the tape. He's squatting like 600 pounds. The dude is an absolute tank still. I mean, it was a nasty knee injury, but I think you're right. Like Chubb took this deal. He came to Houston with the eye for the next contract. I think this was a perfect spot to not be required to shoulder a huge load, to be able to manage his work and get fully back healthy. But I also think like towards the end of the season when, you're normally seeing Mixon like loads and loads of carries, they may go to like a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split because Chubb looks all the way back, and then you have this really like Sonic and Knuckles type thing going on all over again in Houston, which I think is really good.
I think it's possible. If I had to assign the percentage chance, I think there is that Nick Chubb commands 40 to 50% of the carries and makes is rivaling Joe Mixon in terms of yards. I would give that like probably a 20 to 30% chance in my mind of that happening. But I think that the higher odds of what happens are not bad. The odds of us looking back and saying Nick Chubb was a trash signing and the Texans shouldn't have done it is very low. Let's talk about one last thing before we go. Kind of a short show today, but let's talk about Christian Harris. So Christian Harris injured most of the offseason. I honestly, I talked about the parallels between Harris and Pierce's situations, but I started to look into the parallels between Harris's situation last offseason and this offseason because of how he was being handled. Oh, he's on the sidelines. Is he practicing? Is he back? They didn't put him on physically unable to perform. What's going on? They finally put him on the field, and wouldn't you know it, that he lines up next to Azeez Al-Shaair with the ones when he finally takes the field. What do you make of that, and how do you feel about Christian Harris going into this first preseason game?
I'm not surprised at all. I go back to when D'Amico Ryans said he's one of the best linebackers he ever coached. Like, I guarantee you, sans injury, D'Amico probably has the utmost opinion of Harrison. I think you're going to see him try to get that out of him. I really think whatever the injury situation was going on, I think the Texans took care of him with the idea that, hey, Christian Harris will take care of us when he gets right. and that's D'Amico, I think, being a player's coach. I think Nick is kind of a player's GM. I think that, that guy is going to be a force at some point for the Texans. And we're going to look back and go, hey, this was a bad spot, but now this dude is ready to rock and roll. And I think fully healthy, if you put him in there with Azeez and Toa, that's a really, really good linebacker room. And EJ Speed, I mean, we're not even talking about him. I don't think that if Christian Harris is healthy, he won't be a one. Based on the way he played, based on the way D'Amico talked about him, I really feel like he'll be, that dude that Harris County, everybody, is like, this is one of the best linebackers in the league.
Yeah, I mean, and I think some people forget how D'Amico's spoken to him. And I just talked 2 minutes ago about how D'Amico's voice and the way he speaks on players, I think, is coming more in line with how the organization is going to function moving forward. So Harris's health is the only thing, I think, standing in the way of him being on the field. And wouldn't you know, so I brought this up, but online, but the Texans only played Toa and Al-Shaair for the first 5 weeks. Whenever Shaair got suspended and Toa started struggling with injuries, was the first time that it wasn't just those two getting 100% of the linebacker snap share. So with that in mind, you look at the Texans health-wise and how that's impacted them. Other players like Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter were getting 100% snap share throughout the early parts of last season, and some of them throughout the whole season. And that kind of mileage will wear on you. So I think that, even if Toa is not on the field at the first snap, I think he'll get significant snap share. I think that'll give the Texans this flexibility to function. I mean, some people forget, right? Like the Texans' base defense, I believe, is 4-3, but really it's a nickel. So you really only have two linebackers on the field. You got Petrie acting as a linebacker in a way with that star safety role. But what you're really looking at is keeping two fresh linebackers on the field when possible. I think EJ Speed could easily work his way into that rotation. I think that ideally this Texans team could function in two units with Harris and Al-Shaair and then Toa and EJ Speed being able to bring, maybe you split those two up. I don't know how you rearrange it or if you want to just leave one guy on the field at all times. But either way, I can see the vision with bringing in EJ Speed, trying to have a linebacker room where, for example, last season, when Toa went down and Shaair went down and Harris was down, all of a sudden we're starting a linebacker room that features Jake Hansen and Neville Hewitt. And, Neville Hewitt, great special teams player and did show up. And so the Texans got lucky. Him and Hansen played way above their pay grade for a significant stretch of the season. And kudos to them. But I don't think the Texans want to be in that situation again where they're having to dig deep in the depth chart at linebacker. So I think having Harris back is going to be huge. And so far it's looking like it's tracking that way. I'm still super curious what specifically, I kind of like with Yordan Alvarez, where I'm like, Yordan, it didn't seem like you were going to be out from May until all the way in August based off what happened on the field. But here we are, 3 months later, is Yordan, he's hitting, is he coming back? And so that's kind of how it felt with Christian Harris. Was like, you said it was like a hamstring thing. What is the deal, dude? When are you coming back? Astros, Texans, both notorious for their handling of, medical issues. But
I disagree. I think one is what's got mentally people screwed up with the other. I think a lot of people want to put the Texans medical team in the same ozone as the Astros, and I don't think that's the case. The difference between the Astros and the Texans for me is that Dana and all these guys over there are telling you things like breadcrumb. The Texans were very closed door with the whole Christian Harris thing. They were just like, look, he's not right, and when he's right, he'll be out there. Where you felt like Yordan was going to come back every week between, what was it, May and now? It was like one more week, and it was all the time. I think Texan fans felt that way about Harris because
I agree with that.
They didn't know anything. It was oh, we don't know, so it's got to be close. Where is he? So
yeah, kind of like the lie of omission, where like the Texans didn't say anything to us about when he was coming back, but it was like, okay, you put him on IR, which means 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks passed, and we're like, okay, well, what's his status? And they're like, oh, well, we're working through it. Okay, well, what does that mean? So I feel you on that, but I do think that this Texans linebacking core is severely, like, kind of like the interior defensive line, both severely underrated units that have really great guys that can contribute and are definitely a significant part of the reason why this unit is as a being viewed as a top 5 unit in the league. But with that, Tom, do you have anything final to say before we bring this thing to a close?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to them, lining up against somebody other than themselves. Got a game coming up, and we'll have plenty more to talk about then, and then we can kind of figure out what we see, what we think. I mean, I get it. We're not going to get like the full, assortment of plays, but we'll get something to talk about a lot, and we'll have a lot more next week, I think, to dive into.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they're going to send the ones out to start or the twos. I imagine first preseason game, I'm pretty sure and we kind of got messed up last year by the Hall of Fame game, so it'll be a slightly different playbook. But either way, looking forward to watching some Texans football this weekend. So excited about that. As always, I've been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. Tom is at Third Coast Tom on Twitter and TC Tom1 on Instagram. This has been the Bullpen, and thanks for watching. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Let's see.